Hello and welcome to a special live transmission regarding Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan's visit to Russia, a historic visit, two-day official visit of any of Pakistan's premier visiting Russia after 23 years. That increases its significance manifold because there are a wide range of issues which are likely to be discussed between the two leaders. As we speak, Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan and President Vladimir Putin are having a one-on-one meeting, and this particular meeting lasted for 3 hours, and definitely a lot of issues would have been discussed, and we'll definitely update you what transpired in this meeting and talk more in detail about Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan's Russia visit. I am now joined by Mr. Faisal, who is Geo-Political Analyst, and Mr. Omar Khalid, who is a Senior Analyst. Both of them are joining me in the studio. Thank you very much for your time, both of you gentlemen, for being at the show. So I'll start the discussion with you, Mr. Faisal. So what do you think, what is likely to be transpiring out of this particular meeting that lasted almost for now over 3 hours?
Over 3 hours. What I'm looking at is, I'm really sorry about this.
It's okay.
I think it's not working well. Right now, Pakistan's concerns are related to economy. As Pakistan wants to fix its economy, we know that for 2 consecutive years, COVID was out there, and Pakistan, suffered in terms of economy, along with the rest of the world as well. But of course, the focus of Pakistan's economy, Pakistan wants to fix the economy. And if we look at, Pakistan's current diplomatic stance, Pakistan wants to keep it as, multilateral. Pakistan wants to have good relations with all of the countries, Western world, Russia, China, elsewhere, whichever the countries are. Pakistan wants to have good relations only because of one reason, that Pakistan wants to do trade with whole world, regardless of whatever the countries are. And if we look at the priorities, of course, Pakistan was facing energy shortages as well. And currently, there are news coming from Kremlin that Pakistan has emphasized on obviously getting gas pipeline from Russia. We know that North-South gas pipeline project was already there. Pakistan wants it to be ratified, and it should take place as soon as possible. And if we look at the connectivity between Pakistan and Russia through Central Asian republics and Afghanistan, Pakistan wants to have that as well. There are so many reasons for it, and of course we will be talking about that.
Definitely we'll be going into detail with other aspects of this particular tour. Mr. Omar, when we talk about the trade relations, the enhancement of economic ties between Pakistan and Russia, as Mr. Faisal has just rightly alluded to, that Pakistan needs to fix its economy. It's trying to find new partners, especially in the region. So in that regard, how significant a visit do you think of Pakistan's Prime Minister at this point in time in history is for Pakistan's side?
No, as far as Pakistan and Russia cooperation is concerned, Jawad, this is not a new avenue, but this strengthening of bonds is now coming through this visit of Imran Khan Saab and his entourage to Russia. You must remember that in the 1980s, we had the steel mills that was constructed with the help of Russia. We also had the Guddu thermal power station, which was constructed with the participation of the Russian specialists. So the Russian and Pakistan cooperation has been going on since quite some time. There has been a lull in the 1990s and 2000s, but that is coming back with a more stronger relationship. This desire by both the countries, by both the partners, that is Russia and Pakistan, to build a solid relationship, friendship, collaboration, cooperation that is focused on economy, of course, first, and as Faisal has pointed out, but also on other aspects, on the military aspect, on the counterterrorism aspect, and on the people-to-people contact and understanding each other's aspect. The geopolitics and the geoeconomics of the region are changing and will continue to change over the years, and that is why the attitude of Russia has also changed over the time. We know that it had a certain, how should I say, linkages with India in the past few years, that it preferred India over Pakistan in the past, but it is trying to balance that equation out currently with its relationship with Pakistan. Pakistan also understands the fact, and Pakistan, as you can see also, is desirous of developing that stronger relationship with Russia, not at the cost of its relationship with other countries, but a solid balanced relationship. And that is the main arena of the discussions between our premier as well as the Russian President Vladimir Putin, a discussion that is going on as we speak. There's also the mutual respect, something that, Jawad, you need to also remember. You remember the tweet that Vladimir Putin put on Islamophobia because of the caricatures, and how he condemned that we need to respect each other's religion. That is what led to our Prime Minister reacting to that, and a whole, warming up of relationship between the two countries emanated out of that conversation. That and so much more can be worked upon between the two countries, and I think this is just the beginning.
This is just the beginning. Mr. Faisal, as Mr. Omar just rightly pointed out, that there was a tweet by President Trump, President Vladimir Putin, I beg your pardon for that, and in which he categorically said that it's the violation of the religious freedom. So we have seen a rising incidence of Islamophobia in India continuously. Then there was a ban on hijab for the Muslim student girls, and we have seen repeatedly that one happening, Muslim student girls being harassed, and then such type of incidents not happening only in India but also in the Western countries as well. So that was warmly reciprocated by Prime Minister Imran Khan as well. So how both these countries can go ahead in that direction in order to counter this sort of thing which is happening not only in India but also in the Western countries?
There is a timeline when it comes to President Putin. The way he was obviously, portraying himself in the recent times, there is a timeline of it. We know that in Moscow, the biggest mosque in Russia, he opened it, and while he opened it, obviously he invited President Erdogan as well in Russia at that time. That was a step forward by him. And then if we look at the current scenario, the timing of that tweet that you have earlier highlighted, I think it was the best timing, and it was obviously, concerning India, because in today's India, the things which are being, done against Muslims, not only against Muslims, but other
all
minorities as well, And why I say this, because after hijab, they have asked in UP that whoever wears kirpan from the Sikh religion, they will not be allowed to vote. So these sort of things are happening in India, and to me, I think, of course, there was a rising factor of Islamophobia within India, and that's why the President Putin, when he condemned the Islamophobia going on elsewhere in the world, he did not really mention the West, he did not mention the East. He simply said that
there was a loud and clear message sent across the globe.
Across the globe. And while earlier Omar was highlighting one of the points, I want to talk about it as well. Talking about India's good relations with Russia, we know that for years and years, of course, they had an excellent relation with Russia, between obviously both of the countries. But today's India is a different India, and Russia recognizes it. President Putin's office, it recognizes it. How it recognizes it? Because if we look at today's India, India has aligned itself with the Western world. India has aligned itself with Quad. What is Quad? It's obviously an alliance between amongst 4 countries: US, India, Australia, and Japan. So all these 4 countries, they are part of one alliance. Though it is not military alliance at this moment, but it is being considered that in coming future it might turn itself into a military alliance. Why? Because they were already conducting naval exercises together. So now, if we look at that factor, of course, Russia knows what is going on. Russia knows that India has been turned into front line of US against China, and the recent visit of President Putin of Beijing, it was very important. And obviously, when he met with President Xi in Beijing, they must have talked about that factor as well. They must have talked about the standoff which is currently going on between China and India, and that factor would play the key role, especially when we know that both of the countries, Russia and of course China, they have made a contract of 30 years of gas pipeline, number one, which is going to be a good factor for Russia, for Russia's economy. And the second one, which I think it is going to be a key, going to play a key role, is that they used to have $117.6 billion dollars of trade between them previously. Now they have agreed upon increasing it from that to $200 billion. So all of these things, they are leading towards one thing, and that is that President Putin knows that if that relation with India continues in the future, then of course there would not only be Pakistan concerned about it, but China will be concerned about it as well. Very recently in our program, The Debate, we highlighted this aspect, and we asked the question from one of the prominent analysts from Moscow, and we asked him the same question about S-400s, that India still is procuring their military equipments from your country. Then he said to us that right now we are only giving out defensive military equipment, which we have given, if we have given it to India, before that we have already given it to China as well. So both of them having S-400s. So he categorically mentioned that they have concerns over India. He, being an analyst hailing from Moscow, he highlighted a factor which was quite astonishing for me as well. Being someone who regularly appears on Indian media, he said that we are very well aware of the smear campaign going on on Indian media, propagating against Russia, which he had concerns about, and he said that we need to rethink about India.
Mr. Faisal, your point is well taken. We'll come back to this particular point. Mr. Omar, what do you think, as Mr. Faisal just alluded to the fact that there was a $5.5 billion worth of sale of S-400 defense missile system to India by Russia. So definitely there are concerns on the Pakistani side as well. Where do you see this equation going?
I feel that as far as Russia is concerned, it wants to balance its relationship with India and Pakistan. It wants to have the same relationship that it has had with India, because India is also developing its relationship with the United States of America, and it is trying on its end. Whether it succeeds or not is another question altogether, but it's trying to balance its relationship with the US and Russia, and US of course is not happy with that. Coming back to the Russia and its balancing of relationship with India and Pakistan, I think Pakistan should take full advantage of this balancing out of the relationship. India is lending out that hand to Pakistan, the hand of friendship and cooperation, and Pakistan is of course holding out to that hand very strongly. If we look at even just one of the aspects, trade, if we look at trade, the different imports or exports that the two countries have been having, and the different organizations that have been working on, whether it be the Pakistan-Russia Intergovernmental Commission on Trade, Economic, Scientific and Technical Cooperation, that is extremely important organization that could be worked upon as far as the future of these two countries are concerned, as far as trade is concerned. Both countries, especially Pakistan, as Faisal has also alluded to, wants to have a stronger economic position, whether it be Pakistan-centric or whether it be the region-centric. Pakistan wants to stand on its own feet, not depend on aid rather than on trade. And that is what Pakistan's policy is, and that is why our Prime Minister is also talking about that, concentrating on that when he talks to different heads of states, and now with that he is in Russia and talking to Vladimir Putin. Whether there be other issues that will be discussed, of course, the geopolitical situation, geoeconomic situation of the region, but one of the important issues is also collaboration, cooperation in the trade arena. We know about the North-South gas pipeline that Faisal has also talked about. There's something that was signed way back in 2015, and there are certain mechanisms that need to be followed, and of course both countries are going to work out those mechanisms as well.
So Mr. Omar, when we specifically talk about trade, the trade volume between Pakistan and Russia now stands at around $800 million US. Do you think it's up to that potential?
No, because I talked to the Russian ambassador yesterday as well, and during my talks, I did discuss the option of trade between the two countries, and he said, although we don't have as much trade as we should, we are working on it, and that is what both countries want to do. I mean, any country, whether it be Russia, Pakistan, India, or any other country, would want its trade situation to improve.
So what could be the key areas in which bilateral
textile? Russia is extremely interested in Pakistan's textile sector. The Russian ambassador has talked on and on again about how interesting the textile sector is for Pakistan. Leather goods is something that is very important for from the Russian perspective, from Pakistan as well. From the Pakistani perspective, there are so many other things: fertilizers, chemical elements, compounds, rubber, tires and tubes, paper, paperboard, iron and steel. Steel mills, one example that I'm again going towards. But energy sector is something that Pakistan wants. Pakistan wants to, stand on its own 2 feet and not rely on other countries.
I'll come to this energy.
If I could add something into
what
the
are those key
sector?
areas? What Russia has to offer to Pakistan, and what can Pakistan offer in terms of trade?
Tangerines is one more. Before I forget, they love tangerines from Pakistan.
Jawad and Omar, I'm going to tell you something about which is sort of like, popping up. It's like a blessing in disguise. And Pakistan being there, I'm pretty much sure that, ministers, they would be having a keen eye on that factor as well. Right now, there are oligarchs, the giant, people with the money of Moscow. They will be having lots of money, and they will be looking for, of course, better opportunities to invest in. We know that we have special economic zones of CPEC.
Special technological zones as well.
Technological zones as well. Pakistan is a country having an excellent sort of
enormous lucrative business potential, right?
Business potential and potential in the IT field as well, in emerging technologies, in artificial intelligence. Pakistan is a country with 67% of the population under the age of 35, which means that Pakistan, with the time, and of course the education system of Pakistan every year creates many IT engineers, many engineers who excel in emerging technologies as well, and they can be utilized as a workforce. All we need is FDI. All we need is somebody who invests in Pakistan in these sectors. So we are expecting that oligarchs would be looking at investing in Pakistan in these fields as well. Number one. Number two, as we have special economic zones of CPEC, and Pakistan, very recently we know that Prime Minister Imran Khan, he categorically highlighted that he will be inviting everyone to come and invest, be part of the CPEC.
To have a meeting with the business leaders of Russia today as well, after the meeting with President Putin. So, Mr. Omar, where do you see Pakistan excelling when it comes to trade with Russia? There are a number of key areas that you have just highlighted before. Mr. Faisal has also highlighted a couple of those areas. But given the circumstances, the geopolitical situation, when we talk about the freshly imposed sanctions on Russia, do you think it's going to be an uphill task for both the countries to enhance bilateral trade to such an extent that it could be beneficial and its effect could trickle down to the common man?
I think it's very easy for both the countries to work together as far as cooperation or collaboration in trade is concerned. You must remember that Russia is a very strong nation. It does not depend as much on foreign trade or maybe foreign aid, maybe as much as other developing countries do, and that is where both the countries could work together. I've talked about the exports that Pakistan is involved in as far as Russia is concerned, whether it be cotton, whether it be textiles, whether it be leather goods, whether it be rice, fruits, surgical goods, sports goods. We are renowned, Pakistan is renowned for that. Sialkot, if you all remember, makes the footballs that are used in the major soccer leagues. Now, Russia has been taking advantage of that and will continue to take advantage of that, because also of the fact that Pakistan and Russia both have a convergence on important geostrategic issues, and on top of that is the situation in Afghanistan. Both the countries understand what Afghanistan is going through. both the countries know the humanitarian and economic crisis that Afghanistan's people are suffering every day in this bitter cold, and that the aid has yet to really reach in kind to the people. You were talking of the people, let me talk of the Afghan people as well here, of which both Russia and Pakistan are extremely concerned, because there is going to be a trickle-down effect if this situation is not controlled in time, and that includes terrorist elements, that includes extremist elements that are resurging because of that fact, because of a lack of economic structure inside of Afghanistan. That is what Pakistan has been trying to highlight, that is what Russia has been trying to highlight, and that is also one of the important aspects that will be in discussion during the talks between the two premiers.
Premiers, of course, there are two convergent areas vis-a-vis Afghanistan.
Islamophobia, Afghanistan.
Afghanistan. And there are two other sub-areas when it comes to Afghanistan. There are convergent points between Russia and Pakistan. One happens to be counter-terrorism efforts, so that there doesn't happen to be a fallout effect of terrorism beyond the borders of Afghanistan. So the other areas is the dire humanitarian and economic crisis the Afghan people are faced with. So in keeping the first point in discussion, how can both countries cooperate in counter-terrorism efforts in order to make it sure that the promise that the Taliban made in the Doha peace deal, that the Afghan soil is not going to be used against any other country?
But you know, I'll let Raja Faisal talk about it, because he's our counter-terrorism expert.
I just wanted to highlight this aspect. Why? Because there are two provinces, Kunnar and Nangarhar, where there is a problem. There is a problem which is not only for Pakistan and Afghanistan, it is a problem for China, it is a problem for Russia as well, and it is a problem for the West as well. And that is why we have been constantly highlighting, and Pakistan has constantly highlighted, that is why we had the OIC summit as well, that we need to obviously help Taliban and help Taliban regime to counter this humanitarian crisis, because we are getting news that due to this economic crisis in there and humanitarian crisis, the outfits like ISIS Khorasan that happen to be the backyard of Daesh, they are employing people, they are giving out $300 to $400 per person to join ISIS Khorasan. I don't know who's funding all of these outfits, but they are currently doing it. And day before yesterday, MI5's chief, he highlighted that as well, and we highlighted it around 4 months ago. And the concerns are there. Number one, if we talk about three countries, Russia, China and Pakistan, they have concerns about respectively IMU, then we have ETIM, and then we have TTP. And guess what? All of these three, they are being catered by ISIS Khorasan in Nangarhar and Kunnar province. And this ISIS Khorasan is the very ISIS Khorasan against which Taliban were already fighting against.
Your point is well taken. Mr. Faisal, I am joined by a new guest, Dr. Maria Sultan, who is an analyst. Thank you very much for your time at PTV World during this special live transmission regarding Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan's visit to Russia, a significant visit. And as we speak, he and President Vladimir Putin are having a meeting, 3 hours of meeting, and it has gone over that time. How significant do you think this meeting is, and what might be transpiring for the benefit of both the countries, Russia and Pakistan?
Let me just say at the very onset that this is by far one of the most historical visits which has been conducted by any prime minister to Moscow. It also indicates that it is coming together to find solutions for its problem. Number three, it also the fact that there is increased cooperation at bilateral level for not only finding regional and bilateral solutions, but also coming up with some forward strategy for Pakistan.
Dr. Maria, your point is well taken. We'll try to reconnect to you. I'll come back to you, Mr. Faisal. You were going ahead with telling us how there could be counter-terrorism cooperation.
Yeah. I just wanted to say, the joint efforts are needed by these three countries. I'm talking about Pakistan, China and Russia. And now when Prime Minister of Pakistan is already in Kremlin, and he was meeting with President Putin, I am pretty much sure that this factor must have been highlighted there. And all of them, they need to fix this problem of Cunard and Nangarhar province, not only for Afghanistan, it is good for
So what could be
Pakistan
the
and
strategy?
all of these.
What could be the strategy?
Well, like I said, they need to sit down and derive a sort of strategy in which all of them countries, they are all together, sit with Taliban and counter that menace of terrorism. And they need to talk with the Western world as well, that if we clean up ISIS Khorasan, ultimately we are helping you as well. Why? Because ISIS Khorasan happens to be a backyard where all of these training grounds are, from where ISIS, Daesh gets trained, and these are the very ISIS activists who end up in the European countries, and they obviously do terrorism out there. So all of these countries, they need to sit together and they need to derive a sort of strategy to counter that. Otherwise, I don't think Taliban themselves can do something about it. Why? Because we need to understand this factor as well, that right now
all the
Taliban are
countries need
only
to sit together.
Yeah.
Your point is well taken. We are now rejoined by Dr. Maria Sultan, Senior Analyst. Thank you for your time again. So, Dr. Maria, you were alluding to the fact that this is very important and a significant meeting that is taking place as we speak between Prime Minister Imran Khan and Russian President Vladimir Putin. So, when we talk about the situation in Afghanistan, it is definitely would have been discussed between the two leaders. How do you think both the countries can cooperate when it comes to deal and avert the humanitarian and economic crisis the Afghans are faced with, especially after the withdrawal of the international coalition forces from there?
Thank you very much for your question. I think there is no doubt about the fact that this is a historic visit because it signifies one thing very clearly. That is that the region is coming together to find solutions to regional problems. And in this case, as you have mentioned, Afghanistan pretty much sits at the top of the pyramid on that account. What the region fears is that it should not convert into a humanitarian crisis. It should not convert into a civil rights and a civil war situation. And if this has to be mitigated, then it means that there has to be opportunities which have to be opened for the Afghan government, Afghan people, and most importantly, regional economic connectivity has to take precedence over everything else. And this is what seems to be underway at Moscow at the moment, where our Prime Minister has gone with a very strong delegation of ministers, which hopefully will reel in bringing in projects and foreign direct investment for Pakistan in the fields of oil, gas, and hopefully also building up a better bridge for the Belt and Road Initiative as we cooperate with China on the CPAC issue.
So, Dr. Maria, do you think Russian authorities realize that they have got an increased role to play when it comes to averting the humanitarian and economic crisis in Afghanistan, either by giving them humanitarian aid or extending some sort of projects that could help economic revival of Afghanistan?
Well, I think the question here, which the region has been saying, is that it's not that Afghanistan needs humanitarian aid. Humanitarian aid is not going to resolve the Afghan crisis. The region needs to provide economic opportunities, trade opportunities to the people of Afghanistan so that people of Afghanistan are able to stand on their own feet and the region is able to bounce back. And in that case, connectivity plays a very important role. Hence, what we're looking at is this real prospect that regional connectivity may come to life. That means that we also need to get some benefit out of it. The Russians would get some benefit. The Afghans would get some benefit. And at the end of the day, the region will prosper. But for that to happen, certain things have to be done. Number one, your banking systems have to be realigned. Number two, you need to have a better understanding of the trade frameworks which each side provides. And number three, that these opportunities are sustainable and that they will not stand testament to international political pressure and the sanctions approach. And that is what I think the region is speaking against, because if you see very closely, 90% of the countries in this region have been sanctioned for one account or the other. So if you sanction everyone, then how do you expect them to come out of the quagmire which they're in? Because sanctions have rarely affected the regime and mostly affected the people. And it's a people's approach and a regional approach which is at play. And I think Russia, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran, and China and the other 7 countries in the region are cognizant of the fact that there is a convergence of maintaining peace in Afghanistan through actual economic and trade connectivity.
So, Dr. Maria Sultan, you highlighted a very important point over here that you said that Afghanistan doesn't need aid. But when you talk about the short-term averting of this humanitarian crisis, of course, when there is not a stable government already in place in such a war-torn country, of course, there is some help that is going to happen through humanitarian aid, as we have seen the couple of last weeks before, that those frozen funds over there in America were released. 7 billion were released. Half of them were kept for the American victims of war and terror. So in the short term, until a stable government is placed over there in Afghanistan, definitely humanitarian aid happens to be of considerable importance. Do you agree?
I unfortunately beg to differ because you cannot feed nations. The United Nations have failed to address that, and we have seen the Rwandan crisis, we have seen Congo crisis, we have seen multiple crises where the UN food programs have not managed to avert the humanitarian crisis, and we have seen pictures of people actually starving and children actually starving, making it to global news. But that said, I concur with the fact that yes, we should think about it as a very, very, very short-term approach, because at the end of the day, you cannot provide food for an entire nation which is suffering because of sanctions endlessly without any end in sight. People have to find a mechanism through which they should be able to survive, make their own living, and come up with economic progress and prosperity on their own. If you provide no alternatives to the people, no financial future to the people, then it would be actually leading into a food crisis, which would not just be a humanitarian crisis, which would be a humanitarian catastrophe, where you'll be seeing pictures of people starving, people actually selling children, which would be less than 7 to 9 years old. And if you see lots of international media at this moment, the Afghans are precisely doing that. They're selling 7 to 9 years old Afghan girls as brides. And what is the world talking about? That we should give them food? Yes, you give them food for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 5 days. How many days? Because at the end of the day, you have to ensure that the quality of life for the Afghans exists at a level where they can at least sustain on their own, to have food on their own. So humanitarian aid may be very short term, because at the end of the day, you cannot provide food for another nation, and the region needs to come up with some marketable, sustainable solutions which allow this region to prosper and trade and some business opportunities for the people in Afghanistan so that they can make their own living.
So, Dr. Maria, what time frame do you think could be possibly taken for making Afghanistan stand on its feet economically? Because over the last 20 years since the American invasion over here in this country, there had been back-to-back democratically elected governments. But once the Taliban took over and international troops withdrew from here, we saw that no institution building was done. The corruption was rampant. There was no governance system in place for the last 20 years. So how much time do you think it will take for Afghanistan to stand back on its feet when it comes to economic sustainability and self-sufficiency?
I think we need to be a little honest about it. There were governance structures which were put in place in Afghanistan. The only difference is that those people who are manning these systems, they also flew out of Afghanistan with NATO and its members. So that is why you have a crisis of state, which is visible in Afghanistan. If you reverse it, the region has got lots of scientific people, they've got lots of economic progress points where we should be able to help and reverse this trend. Whether we can do it in 2 years, perhaps not. But one thing is for sure, we need to chart out a path which will allow people to see hope. Because at this moment, Afghanistan and people of Afghanistan are facing hopelessness. This is criminal that the money which belongs to the poor people of Afghanistan and the poor, Afghan government has been taken away and given to victims of 9/11. That is not to say that the victims of 9/11 did not suffer. Yes, they suffered. But the American government is a rich government. They should have appropriated funds from some other funds which could be given to the victims of 9/11 rather than the funds of the Afghan government. And if this was the case, why this decision was not made in the first format of the currency or the money which was given to Afghanistan in the very onset 20 years back, or why it was not done in the Bonn conference, why it was not done in other conferences. So the mere fact it is being done at a time where there is a pending humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan needs a rethink by the international community, and also to understand what kind of policies are actually leading regions and people to actually suffer beyond human life. I think, and that is what we need to see, because it's not about Pakistan, it's not about Afghanistan, it's not about even Russia for that matter. It is about understanding the fact that the value of life is important if international security is to prevail as a constructive concept for future nations to build on.
So, Dr. Maria, coming back to the meeting between President Vladimir Putin and Prime Minister Imran Khan, a key area which was likely to be discussed between the two leaders was the enhancement of trade and economic ties. Given the new circumstances at the global level, we have seen fresh sanctions imposed by the US and its Western allies on Russia. Now, when we talk about the enhancement of trade and economic ties between Pakistan and Russia, Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan, during his interview before heading to Russia, said it was because of the sanctions which were on place on certain companies that the Park Stream gas pipeline project couldn't be realized. So do you think it's going to be an uphill task for both the countries, Russia and Pakistan, given the fact freshly imposed sanctions are there?
I think the sanctions approach is a bigger question mark for the entire region. If you look closely right now, there are sanctions on Iranian oil companies. That are the sanctions which the Prime Minister was talking about, because it was said that if you try to connect up oil gas pipeline to Iran, there will be sanctions on Pakistani companies as well. The only company which was willing to work with us on that was Rosneft, which was working on both sides of the border. And that would have allowed us to build up on our oil and gas potential. Now, that said, we are also under the threat of FATF conditions and FATF sanctions. China is under sanctions, Russia is under sanctions, Afghanistan is under sanctions. So the real question here is that what will the 90% sanctioned world do? If you're already sanctioned, then the fear factor which you have got and the potential of loss is already done and dusted. The fear exists so long you're in the grey list. The fear doesn't exist once you've entered the dark list, because it basically means that now you have to come up with alternative strategies. You need to build up on ideas which can allow for your progress in economics to move forward. For this region to move forward on that, we will have to wait in terms of how the Belt and Road Initiative will come forward, what kind of banking arrangements can be done, and then the second question is, what will be the currency swap agreements? Because if you're able to do currency swap agreements, then perhaps we can mitigate some of the effects of these U.S. sanctions on Pakistan, or for that matter, even Russia. Because let's not forget, 95% of the world's oil is passing in front of Pakistan's seas, and we are unable to utilize even 10% of that. And what is the reason for that? The reason for that is that we are part of that sanction threat which has prevailed. It will be a challenge, but this is something which we will have to think through as a region.
Right. Dr. Maria Sultan, Senior Analyst, thank you for being with us at this special transmission. We really appreciate your time. Mr. Faisal, coming back to a certain point that you alluded to, a fact in your previous discussion was enhancing the people-to-people contacts. Of course, there happens to be a very critical point that is related to that. Do you think that the visa regime between Russia and Pakistan should be eased so that people from all walks of life could move henceforth from Russia to Pakistan and from Pakistan to Russia?
It must be done, Jawad. It's an excellent question, and I think without that, the purpose won't be served of bringing Russia and Pakistan closer to each other. If we talk about, obviously, Prime Minister of Pakistan visiting with his delegation to Russia, fair enough. That is, nice. It's a tier one. They are doing it. They are initiating it. But when we talk about, lower levels, even there should be exchanges between the journalists as well. Right now, we are facing the same problem which is being faced by the Russians. And if we talk about the Chinese as well, recently, we did talk about it, that all these three countries, they have to have relations between journalists as well. There should be exchanges, journalist exchanges, then student exchanges, then there should be cultural exchanges between both of the countries and all three countries. Why I say this? Because right now all these three countries, they are facing a smear campaign from media elsewhere in the world. Not all, but majority of them. And they, if we take China, China is facing the same. Russia is facing the same. Pakistan is facing the same. That for 15 consecutive years, there was a campaign going on media from India against Pakistan. And so I think there should be, joint ventures between Pakistan and China, joint ventures between Pakistan and Russia, and there should be multilateral cooperation when it comes to media, because media plays a key role in current world. And the way world is moving nowadays, of course, propaganda is we're talking about the fifth generation
very
warfare.
important point. We'll discuss it in detail.
Yeah.
So, people-to-people contacts, Mr. Omar, how can they be enhanced between Russia and Pakistan?
People-to-people contact. Now that we live in an arena where you can know the latest on whatever is happening across the world on the touch of a button, as Faisal was doing right now, to know what is happening in Moscow as we speak. The fact remains
I'm
that
awaiting the statement,
So am I, Faisal, so don't worry about that.
Oh,
The fact remains, Jawad, that people-to-people contact has become easier. On the touch of a button, you can get in touch with somebody via email, via Skype, via FaceTime. So many arenas of talking to each other, despite being on different sides of the border, is now easier than anticipated or expected.
Owing to
And
technological
yes,
revolution,
of course.
but still geography remains to be a reality.
Language is also a barrier. The Russians speak a certain language, we do. Understanding each other comes through understanding the language as well. We need to also learn each other's languages, as a lot of people are also learning Chinese as we speak. Faisal, I think you would agree with me on that. We should also learn Russian. There's a huge populace in Russia, and the people-to-people contact also deepens or strengthens when we can talk each other in each other's language, because then we understand each other better. The little peculiarities of our culture, traditions that are quite similar in context as well, because of the region that we live in, can also be better understood by each other and of course worked upon because of understanding each other's languages. Then there are the different avenues, as Faisal has talked about. We have doctors, we have engineers that could work together. Russia needs a lot of workforce that is dedicated in certain fields, like engineers, like doctors, like in different specialized fields as well, and that Pakistan could give to Russia, but for that they also need to learn the Russian language, as a lot of people are learning Chinese, as I've just talked a little bit before. Then the cultural exchanges also make people understand each other's culture better. A lot of people don't know what Russia is. A lot of people don't know what their culture or their traditions are. A lot of people don't know how similar or not their people live, how much of a social balance is present in Russia that is very similar to that in Pakistan. The family structure is very similar to that in Pakistan as well. So that needs to be told to the people.
Resultantly, it will promote tourism between both the countries.
Of course,
Exactly,
and tourism is something that Pakistan wants as well. More and more people coming to Pakistan, more people understand Pakistan, and vice versa for Russia as well. So I think, this can happen very easily, very quickly. It has been happening. We've had delegations, we've had trade delegations in the past as well. So I think the culture would be the main arena where both countries should work together so that the people understand each other.
So, and education scholarships and people coming
That
from
has
Russia.
been happening.
That has already been happening in Russia. We
But
have
it
Pakistani
needs to be
students.
increased.
Yes.
It needs to be increased. Why I say this, I think for a long time.
Students from both sides should be facilitated
Exactly.
with the entire process, right?
Exactly. And not only the students, even the researchers as well. The research should be shared between the universities. I mean, I would say Punjab University should be sharing its research with the Moscow University, and whatever Moscow University has to offer, they can share with. And one aspect is very unique with Russia, that with time, when it comes to tech, they have improved themselves and they have been constantly doing it. And of course, we are far behind them. And to some extent, of course, if we can work on that bilaterally, then it would be a plus point as well.
Faisal, you talked about the media, you talked about media collaboration.
Yeah.
One thing that both Russia, Pakistan are dealing with is disinformation or misinformation.
True.
And that needs to be worked upon by working together in this field and thwarting out ways. As you said, the Russia is much stronger in the IT field. Maybe Pakistan can learn and vice versa on how to combat it in the cyberspace.
Exactly.
Mr. Omar and Mr. Faisal, your points are well taken. It was really enlightening discussion with both of you gentlemen, and unfortunately we are short of time and we'll have to go for the news bulletin. Thank you for being in this special transmission, a highly anticipated meeting between President Vladimir Putin of Russia and Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan. A host of issues would have definitely been discussed. It was supposed to be for 3 hours, but it has lasted well over that time span. As we talked with Mr. Omar and Mr. Faisal and Dr. Maria Sultan, they were all of the view that there are a number of areas other than trade cooperation, defense cooperation, and energy cooperation, the people-to-people contacts through educational exchange programs, as well as promoting tourism, can be enhanced. And with this, we come to the end of today's special transmissions discussion. It's goodbye from me, Jawad Tehami, and my entire production team. Thank you for being with us.